1. So years ago, I took a low-paying entry-level job doing data entry for a private investigator agency. I was just starting my career and moving between states. So I took what I could get in a hurry. My official role was entering info for time, case notes, spreadsheets, tracking costs and charges to clients, etc. It was an unorganized mess when I got there and sorely in need of an overhaul. In a few months, I'd restructured how things were organized, taking care of weeks of backlog, and made it a lot easier to track info in the database system I'd set up for the business. I was doing way over my official title, and it actually fixed a bunch of networking issues for the business as well. Thus, as no good job goes unpunished, I became the unofficial IT monkey for the business, and suddenly anything to do with computers, network, printers, etc. became my responsibility. Meanwhile, I received no pay raise and was told I'm just lucky they took me on with such little actual working experience. Whatever. The business had one of those large, clunky, but fairly bulletproof HP 5SI printers. This is back in the early 90s. That did nearly all of the business printing. It handled abuse and ate through paper like a champ. It also had a big cartridge that was good for months at a time. But eventually, toner does run out and needs replacement, just like paper. I watched for weeks as the toner level kept dropping and notified the head secretary and managers that we need another cartridge soon or work would stop. But what do I know? I'm only a data entry guy, and eventually the printer just stopped. The head secretary, Hilda, came in yelling at me that I need to fix the printer ASAP. I had a look and confirmed the toner was low. I gave the cartridge a good shake, and the last few print jobs completed. In the words of the head secretary, I'd fixed it. Well, no. This might get you another day or two of printing, but I needed funds to get another cartridge, ASAP. Or the next time the printer stops, no amount of shaking will fix it. Whatever, what do I know? I'm just a data entry guy. I was again ignored. 2 days later, the printer again stops and Hilda tries several times to pull the cartridge. Give it a shake. Try printing again. Nope. The printer stubbornly refuses to work for her, so again, I'm pulled aside by Hilda and told to fix the printer. Which I can't, and I tell her she needs to give me money to go buy a cartridge, and she leaves in a huff. I'm pulled into the CEO's office, and I'm grilled for 20 minutes that my attitude sucks. I'm being difficult and refusing to work with the head secretary Hilda, and told to just fix the printer because work is now at a standstill. I take a deep breath, calmly explaining that I'd notified the management and Hilda several weeks ago that we're low on toner and will need a replacement. But I was told, no, that's expensive. 2 days ago, the printer stopped, and I again warned them that the fix of shaking the cartridge was a temporary solution, and we'd need a replacement ASAP. But I was again told, no, that's expensive. The CEO looked at Hilda, the head secretary, and asked, did that happen? Did he tell you what was needed and you told him no? Hilda suddenly became indignant and yelled, yeah, he said something, but it was expensive and I thought he was exaggerating. The CEO looked at me and asked, did you not tell her how important this was? I replied that yes. I said the printer would fail and work would stop. We needed a replacement ASAP, but I was again told no. The CEO continued staring at me and turned again to Hilda asking, did he freak out when you told him no? Hilda replied, no, he absolutely did not freak out, so how was I supposed to know he was serious? The CEO returned his gaze to me and asked, well, did you freak out like you should have done? At this point, my brain is caught somewhere in the twilight zone, and I'm trying to process the conversation that I'd witnessed. Eventually, the awkward silence is broken, and I repeat, I notified you all what was going to happen and what was needed to prevent it from happening. That I needed money for a simple printer consumable, and time was running out to avoid a work stoppage. I am at a loss as to what else I could have possibly done. There is a shared look between the CEO and Hilda and a rolling of eyes, followed by a deep sigh from the CEO. The CEO responds, "You could have freaked out a little more. This is on you." And Hilda, the head secretary, looks smug, while two sets of eyes rest on me in my seat. Now I'm just shocked, deflated, and tempted to simply walk out in protest. But rent is due next week, and I still have bills, so I proffer a tepid, "I'm sorry." And the CEO looks like he just crafted a peace accord in the Middle East, and finishes with, "Okay, fine, let's get back to work," and begins to turn away while Hilda begins to rise from her chair. I stay seated and politely cough while raising my hand. We're still out of toner. Hilda can order some from our office supplier, but it won't come in until next week. If you want the printer to actually, print, I'll need to buy a cartridge retail for more money like today, like now, and I'll need a check to buy the cartridge from a shop across town. The CEO looks to Hilda, and she scowls at me, asking, "Can't you just shake it?" I actually did get a check and bought another cartridge that day, but not without another lecture about keeping costs down and freaking out appropriately. 2 weeks later, I took another job and gave a week's notice. Legend tells they're still shaking that cartridge to this day. A little clarification that this happened in the early 90s, about 1994, and the secretaries had been there for several years. They had originally worked on typewriters and were new to working on computers. Hilda was an older woman in her mid-50s with an attitude, and was perpetually confused by all the computer stuff. It was an experience working there, and yes, they're still in business, I think. 2. For a while now, we've been having a dispute with our landlord regarding several things wrong with our place that he either refuses to do anything about or says he'll do something and then is too lazy or greedy to follow through. Last January, a new dispute began. Nearly annually, we have had a maintenance guy come over to perform maintenance on the heating unit. This was a major nuisance for us, because without prior warning, there would be a guy at our door calling my husband, and either him or me had to drop whatever we were doing and come home so the maintenance can be done. Later, we found out this was because the company the maintenance guy works for would call the landlord to make an appointment, and the landlord would just pick the first possible option instead of coordinating the date with us, but I digress. The real trouble started when we got the bill for the maintenance. In our country, the landlord and tenant have to have agreements on who pays what. Our landlord didn't talk to us about this, didn't mention anything or whatever. He just gave the maintenance company our info and they sent us the bill. This didn't sit right with me at all, but my husband didn't want any trouble with anyone, so he paid the bill, which wasn't small. Unfortunately, due to difficult personal circumstances, this happened thrice in total. The third time was last January. My husband paid the bill again, but I decided enough is enough. I started messaging the landlord asking to pay us back for all the bills. I spoke to a lawyer. All in all, she said it's unlawful that he has no agreements with us and still makes us pay the bill. In the meantime, the landlord came to my husband's workplace during work hours to talk. In other words, he came to rant and yell at my husband. In his unhinged ranting and yelling, which my brilliant husband recorded, excellent, the landlord said that if a lawyer says so, then he'll pay us back. "Ask and you shall receive, Mr. Landlord." I contacted the lawyer again. She sent him a demand letter and gave him a week to pay us back. Did he pay back? Of course not. After weeks of back and forth over email, and me calling him out on lies and inconsistencies, and at this point, demanding payment, last week he tells me that he has no obligation to pay us back because my husband signed a contract with the aforementioned maintenance company. He also said we can ask them to send us that contract. Husband and I talked about this and came to the conclusion that it's unlikely, as neither of us remembers any contract, let alone have a copy. The next day, my husband calls the company to ask for the contract. Long story short, they told him they don't have any contracts with us personally. They only have a contract with the landlord, which obligates them to perform maintenance on heating units in all of his properties. He should have given us a subcontract that he'd have to make himself, which means the company wouldn't have it anyways. I sent the landlord an email telling him they don't have any contracts with us, and once again demanding payment. This was Friday last week. This past Monday, the landlord answered my email. It briefly said, "See the maintenance contract attached." Weird. I open the attachment. Oh, I see a contract, all right. First thing I see is the maintenance company logo. Mind you, a few days earlier, the same company told my husband they don't have any contracts with him. The second thing I see is the opening paragraph of the contract, being addressed directly to my husband. I scroll down to the last page and I thought, nah, that's not how he writes his name. There was a written date and a signature. The handwriting was obviously not my husband's, and the signature looked to me to be similar to his, but not his. I thought it looked very awkward. It didn't have the same flow my husband's handwriting has, if that makes sense. At this time, I wasn't 100% sure, though. When my husband got back from work, I showed him the contract. He immediately said it's not his signature. He grabbed some other documents he signed before to compare. He wrote down his signature on a blank piece of paper to show me how he signs, clear as day. The signature was forged. Then we looked closer at the contract. We could see that the opening paragraph that addressed my husband personally was in a slightly different font from the rest. Then it also occurred to us that this contract only applies for one particular year, 2023. Okay, so if this contract is only valid in 2023, and when signed by the customer, the company is obligated to perform maintenance within that same year, then why did no one perform any maintenance on our heating unit in 2023? Spoiler, because the contract is fake, that's why. We were dumbstruck, furious, and frankly tired of this bull. We started Googling what to do in this situation. Most consistent answer we found was to file an official police report. The police will investigate and take necessary measures, so we called the police. We have an appointment tomorrow. 3. We live in a rental with a shared yard. My aunt lives in the front house, I live in the back. We're surrounded by forest near a main road, and there's no fence yet, we're building one. I have 2 dogs, one's a hunter and the other, her pup. They're trained, they stick to the trees and never go near the road. My aunt has 2 little dogs, maybe Poms. When the road was closed, they used to cross to the neighbor's who has about 5 small dogs. One day her pup crossed and got hit by a car while returning. She started crying and blamed my dogs, but both were right beside me the whole time. One of my dogs is in heat. We usually give her vet-approved birth control every 6 months, but it didn't arrive this time. We've been keeping her inside except for walks. She did slip out once and I chased her. At the same time, my aunt's senior blind dog with no teeth came barking at us in the road, and I was trying to manage both situations. Today she came screaming at my mom, kicked a stray and said my dog caused her puppy's death. But I've never even brought up the fact that her dog killed 3 of my kittens. Bit 2 and gave one a heart attack. That same dog used to growl at my pit bull collie Mix, who was tied up. He once scratched the dog after being constantly provoked. Her husband even shot a gun at a tree where my dog was tied and said he'd kill him. I moved my dog closer to our back door and kept him inside at night. But I'm scared now. I worry they'll hurt my cats or dogs when I'm not around. She even brought up a loan my mom gave her when we were sick, about $1,000, and blamed us for her being in debt. But she's in debt because she got a loan for her abusive husband to buy a car, not because of us. She abandoned her kids at 9 to move here. Her son tried going to uni, but she pulled him out. Now he helps with the bills while she still supports that man. Her daughter once told me that she wishes my mom was her mom, someone who always puts her kids first, no matter what. I've kept quiet for years, but yelling at my mom and blaming my dogs? That crossed the line. Is she just entitled, or something worse? While some might view us as irresponsible pet owners, all our cats are healthy and spayed. We have 5, and they stay in our yard, often lounging in trees. Our 2 small pups are only outside when we are. They are leash-free during walks. As for our pit bull collie Mix, he can't be off-leash in public due to breed stereotypes, even though he's a gentle soul. Yes, he goes on late-night walks with us, since there are less people out, and we avoid the whole chaos of people telling us we should have a muzzle or cross the street as soon as they see him. It's not ideal, but we love him. And adopting him saved his life when he was about to be put down at age 1. We leave food and water outside for any strays that might need it, as they're common in our area. The kittens that were killed came from a pregnant stray we decided to foster. We've scheduled our female dog to be spayed for June when my sister is on summer break. We've kept our female dog out of heat by spaying both of our males. I know it's not ideal for him to be tied up, but he's only outside when we're not home. At night, we untie him, and he's free to roam the house. Now that I'm working, we're installing a fence so they can roam safely and freely. 4. So my little brother, in this story he's 9, Sky, is my half-brother, his mom being Crystal, and we share the same dad. When they split, Crystal really screwed with the divorce papers that had Dad and I living by the skin of our teeth. Luckily, my grandma, bless her soul, and my new stepmom, who is wonderful and I love her, got them to court and got the custody agreement good, and got her outed as a meth head. The custody goes as my dad has primary custody, getting him during weeks, and her on weekends, except in summer, where we get him a week and she gets him a week. Unfortunately, the state we live in is joint custody, thus we couldn't have her custody fully revoked. But back to the story at hand. Sky's birthday is in June, and with all the court stuff that was going on that year, he was pretty down. So me, Tammy, my awesome new stepmom, and Dad planned a surprise party for him on his birthday, since we had him that week. So we worked hard, got decorations, made a custom piñata, even had a custom cake made off his Minecraft skin, as he was very much into the game at that time. Everything was going fine, until Crystal was informed she wasn't invited. For reasons I can't say here, she was trespassed from my grandparents' property, aka where we were holding the party, and to be honest, we didn't really want her there, as she was notorious for getting drunk and making scenes. Dad told her, and she didn't like that. Now, note, my dad forgot to tell her where the party was. This is important. So, a few days before the party, me and Sky decide to head to the local pool, as it was stupid hot, and thought it'd be fun. We get there, and we're swimming for a good hour when who should show up? Crystal. In a really skimpy bikini, asking if it was just me and Sky. She tried to seduce my dad back to her a lot. It looked horrible. I said yeah as Sky swam up to say hi to his mom. She then blurts out how excited she is for Saturday, his birthday, and couldn't wait for the surprise. Right there I cut her off. They're in my line of sight, so I could keep an eye out. The minute he was out of hearing range, I told her not to mention the party to Sky as it was a surprise. She said she knew, but she wanted to be the one to surprise her baby. After he got the soda, I told him Grandpa texted me he wanted us headed back home as he needed some help with the garden, which Sky loved our grandpa, so jumped at the chance, so we left her at the pool, not knowing she had one more trick up her sleeve. Day of the party came, and our grandparents took Sky out for breakfast while we set up the party. My stepsister Chris, who is Crystal's bio-daughter, but isn't insane like her mom, and I still think of her as a sister, came up to me and asked if we invited Crystal. Me, Dad, and Tammy confirmed we didn't, and Chris told us she was asking her where the party was. She was planning to crash her 9-year-old son's birthday party to be petty. But remember, this is my grandparents' property where she was trespassed. Dad texted her that the party is at our grandparents' place, and unless she wants to be arrested, then she should stay away. She didn't message back, nor show up, which I was grateful for. Sky had such a blast, and I hadn't seen him smile that big since the whole custody mess started. 5. I live in a fairly large, about 4,800 acres, ranch in Montana. I'm not a rancher, and I don't pretend to be, but I inherited the ranch, and leased most of the land out to people who know what they're doing. Now, when I took possession of the property, I had the boundaries reviewed and marked by a surveyor, and with my trusty ATV I verified that the fence was intact all around my property, and was marked no trespassing, according to the law. Met my neighbors, tried to live quietly in the beauty I had. One day, coming back from town, I found 3 cars blocking my driveway. My driveway is private, graded gravel road about 1 1/4 miles long from my fenced marked gate on the public access road. Nobody around, and because of the way the road was built with drainage ditches on either side, no way to drive around them and no way to drive past them. But I was about 3/4 of a mile from my house. I climbed up in my truck to see if I could see anyone around. No joy. Now, I considered just chaining onto the vehicles and towing them with my truck, at least until I can get by, but I figured I'd better get some witnesses, so I called it into the sheriff's office. Fortunately, the deputy on duty on my side of the county was fairly close, so he swung by in half an hour or so. "Hey, Doc," he said. "I'm an emergency physician in the local hospital, and know most all of the emergency responders." "Bob, how's Charlie?" his teenage daughter, who I had seen a few months earlier in the emergency department, doing. "She's back to normal, thanks," he said. "What's up?" I pointed to the vehicles. "I came back from town to find these cars parked here. I don't know who they are. Can't get past them and can't see anyone around here. I'd like to get past them to get to my house." "Well, I can ticket them and order them towed, but the nearest tow truck is probably 2 hours away. Why not just tow them yourself?" "That's what I was thinking of doing, but I wanted a witness." "Okay, Doc, let me give you a hand." So we took some pictures of all of it and towed the cars out of the way, which caused some damage to the road surface. Gravel, right? The damage is what really annoyed me. I had just paid the bill to have the road graded and more gravel added, something that has to be done every year or so on such roads. But I was able to get by, which was the important thing. The next morning, the cars were still there. And the next morning. So the cars had been there 3 days now. They were still there. I'd had enough. I drove out to the cars with some wooden cribbing and a high-lift jack and jacked the cars up, put cribbing down and left the cars there, wheels up in the air. It took 2 more days before anyone showed up. 8 people showed up, angry because their cars had been essentially booted. They really didn't like it when I told them they owed me for parking, the damage done to the road, because they blocked it. "You know this is a private road, right?" I asked.
"We didn't know."
"You had to pass a closed gate with signs to get onto this road, then you blocked the road because you were too stupid to park like an adult. Blocked emergency access to my home? I should have had your cars towed, which the sheriff told me I could do. They started threatening me, saying they'd call the police." "Go for it." Turns out they were backpacking, and their phones had all died, so they wanted me to call the police. Fair enough. The deputy, Bob, again showed up, and since he already knew the situation, their claims didn't get far. This time, I had Bob trespass them and escort them off my property. "They can wait for the tow truck on the public road," I said. "Also, Bob, I'd like to have their names, addresses, license numbers, and vehicle registration noted in your report for my lawsuit." "No problem, Doc." He took them to the public road, 3 trips, called a tow truck, which took 4 hours to arrive, $500 fee per vehicle to lower them. I got the cribbing back, and towed them off my property to the public road. They were still trespassed. About a month later, I received a notice they were suing me. Fair enough. I counterclaimed them. In the local court, they were from Denver, which is a drive away. My lawyer laughed at their claims, so did the judge, and they were very unhappy when he ordered them to pay for resurfacing the road, again, plus storage and punitives. They threatened to appeal. My lawyer explained they were welcome to do so, but the appeal would still be in Montana, in the state Supreme Court. Montana doesn't have an intermediate appeal court, in Helena, in likely 3 years before it's scheduled, plus legal fees on their end, and their odds of losing were pretty high. Plus we'd be including more legal charges, plus charges for their camping on my land, damages, etc. I found at least one campsite where they left trash around, including an envelope with their name on it. It took a year, but I got the payment from the third hiker last week. I decided that the money will go to help pay for my annual summer barbecue for the county's emergency responders. 2 days of smoked brisket and the trimmings, games for the kids, swimming in my pool, or my stream, and whatever. I do this every year, since it's a small town. Small town living. So much better than the big city I originally came from. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Idiots in the Wild, episode 197. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Please do hit the like button before you go, and subscribe if you haven't done so already to get more videos like these in your inbox. And if you'd like to support my channel here, you can do that by signing up for my Patreon page. That is linked for you in the description. And you can also buy some merchandise, which is also linked in the description. Okay, that's all the business, so let's move on to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is, those of you who enjoy baking, what is your go-to? What is your favorite thing to bake? I mentioned this as recently as in today, a few hours ago. I was out essentially to pick up some essentials, but I did also end up restocking my baking ingredients. The idea is I think I might bake either scones or cookies this weekend. Scones, because scones are my go-to. I like to do cinnamon scones. Sometimes I'll put sultanas or raisins in them. I even like to dip them in chocolate sometimes, depending on what I'm doing with them. But I also might try cookies, because I've never actually baked cookies before, although they're not necessarily a complicated thing to do. So I think I've got everything I need to do that. So why don't you let me know if you enjoy baking, what is your go-to? The recipe you could probably do blindfolded if you had to. Leave your answer in a comment below. I look forward to reading them. I'm not going to lick the screen or anything. I'll just read them. And before we go, let's take a look at the answer of the day from a previous video. And today's answer comes from Idiots in the Wild 196, and I think it was like food hacks, things that you learned that make cooking a little bit easier. Today's answer comes from, let me see, Mark Westhoff. On food hacks, I had learnt recently that the difference between garlic mayonnaise and aioli is a little bit of lemon juice and parsley. My dip game has improved tenfold. Thank you very much for your answer, Mark Westhoff, and I have to say I really do enjoy aioli. I much prefer it over other garlic dips. I usually have one or two of a particular brand. Can't remember the name off the top of my head, but it's a little yellow plastic tub in my fridge. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.